Good evening, everybody. The study session on October 25th is called to order. Donna, will you do a roll call, please?
I will. And we have a couple people joining us via Zoom as well, a couple of council members. So Councilmember Bode.
Here.
Councilmember Sherman via Zoom.
Here.
Thank you. Councilmember Gutierrez.
Here.
Marinesco.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Schmidt.
Here.
Councilmember McDowell via Zoom.
Here.
Thank you. And Councilmember Peterson is absent this evening.
Thank you, Donna.
You're welcome.
Tonight, we have an update on the water comprehensive plan. City Engineer Ken Gill will have information for us.
Good evening, council members. It's good to see you guys on this rainy fall night. So in front of you in your council packet is a PowerPoint presentation, kind of looks like that. So I was going to walk our way through it, Director Harris and I, and to kind of give you a quick refresher. So you run the slides for me? Sure. You're going to tell me to turn it? Next slide, please. Okay. Oh, hold on again. I didn't tell you to break it. Go back. Yeah,
There he is.
Okay, where's your car? Okay. Okay, there's a date at the top of that slide, July 20th, 2021. That's when Corella was here to give an update on the 10 chapters that they prepared to support Shelton in its water comp plan. The titles are listed on the slide. The big important one for that engineers get excited about is a capital improvement plan. But there's other ones that sequentially lead up to that, starting with what does your system provide? How much more water do you need? And then it accumulates with a financial plan and what you need for rates. So you're doing great. You're doing great. It's just a little easy on the trigger finger there. So after Corella presented, the plan was sent to some outside agencies. That's the Department of Health. That's who regulates us as a water purveyor. Department of Ecology. We also sent it to Mason County, Port of Shelton, and the Squaxin and Squamish tribes. So we got comments from the Department of Health, from Ecology, and the Squaxin tribes. And I'll talk about those a little bit next in that future slide. DOH commented that we need to increase our standby storage. And what our standby storage is, the amount of water we've got in our tanks that is available for our firefighting activities and that sort of thing, so that if there's a fire at one of our residences, we can put it out quickly and there's always water there. So the Department of Health looked back at our 2010 comp plan. They said, hey, back in 2010, you talked about how some storage deficiencies you had. You did some of the projects in there, you didn't do all of them. And City of Shelton, you need to finish what you started, the projects they had in 2010. And by the way, recommend some additional projects so that you could come back in compliance in the next 10 years. So we'll talk about that on the next slide. There's a little table in there that talks about the numbers that we need to have, and those are in million gallons. So lots of water. Next slide, 10-year planning horizon. I talked about the 6-year capital improvement project. These projects will be listed in there, but the big one is making the Angleside pump station an asset instead of an adversary. So right now, it doesn't provide any additional pressure or storage like it's supposed to. We're the first project on the book basically adds some additional piping up in that area. And what that does is it allows us to pressurize that zone. So those neighbors and friends up there always have enough pressure to run faucets and laundry and things like that. So Jay and I were out doing some walking and met with one of our residents out there that commented on it. It's, hey, we need to do some, make sure that we do some improvements up there. 30 PSI is the magic number that DOH likes to have at the meter delivered by us. The other one is a new Mountain View Reservoir. I'll let Corella talk about that next on December 6th when they show up. And then there's 4 other projects there that are listed. And the sum of the both of them are what Shelton needs to do to make our storage deficiencies go away in the 10 and 20-year planning horizon. Next slide. So other comments that Department of Health asked us to look at is you need to look at your water use efficiency. And water purveyors are judged and measured by Department of Health on how much we leak. So Sheldon kind of has tried to quantify that by we read the meter at each of our sources, our wells. And of course, we also have meters that we read at your residence or your commercial business. The difference in what we produce and what is read at your meter is called our leakage. You know, there's leakage in our system. So as part of your packet, we have a water system use goals that we put together. It's this one pager that's in your packet. And there's two goals in there, but they can really be summed up in one. Says it to stop leaking so much. Stop leaking so much at our source, and stop leaking so much at our meters. The way that the city has began implementing leaking so much at the meters is this new automatic meter infrastructure read upgrade. So right now, if we were to go out to the building that burned down, pulled out the water meter lid, we'd see a brass meter, census meter, and they're spinning around. What will be replaced with an iPro meter, which instead of using water going through it, it's electrically fed. So Director Harris is working on that. I won't talk about that anymore. The other goal that's talked about in here is providing conservation kits for residents, low use shower fixtures, things like that. The table I'll draw you to in that document shows what our leakage is and over the years for the past, backing up to 2010, and you can see it jumps around a little bit. So the whole goal for us is to keep it under 10%. And we've had success at that. Recently in 2021, we're down below 3, but in previous years, we've been up above the 10% rule, and we need to continue that trend down. The other thing that you is it's always a continuing goal is to educate our water customers about the quality of their water. Many of you might have seen this comes out annually. Our guys produce it. It's a summary of all the testing that our guys do throughout our system. Next slide. Another key comment we got from the Department of Health is to confirm what our fire flow requirements are in our residential or commercial zones. In 2010, for a single family residence, it was 750 gallons per minute. Right after that comp plan, the fire code was changing it up to 2. So Jay and I met with Carrillo today. What that requires us to do is to upsize some of our pipes in the ground in our residential areas. The common pipe size in Shelton, West Mountain View, East Mountain View is 6-inch. That was kind of the standard when those plats were put in. The standard now is 8-inch. So there'll be some additional piping projects in the capital improvements plan that we'll share with you. Next slide. Squaxin Island commented on our SEPA. The big comment is one of the projects in the plan is to drill a new source well. As you recall, if all our sources are kind of on the north side of town, out there by the YMCA, you have the wells and the springs. They're kind of all over there. The comp plan has recommended that we get an additional source up in Angleside so that we aren't pumping all our water up there. If you know, for example, you're supposed to show that if you have your largest source out of use for some reason, electrical fire, for some reason, you can still supply the city with fire flow. And that's one of the plannings in our long-term horizon. One of the things that the Squaxin tribe is concerned about is making sure there's still summertime flows for the salmon that are returning in Goldsboro Creek. Recall Goldsboro, since the dam was took out in 2007, it's one of the few streams in the Puget Sound where salmon are increasing in numbers in return. So Shelton is blessed with a filter plant that we filter our sewer from right now the correction center, and we have a spray field that allows us to discharge that water after cleaning up to Class A, which is not quite drinking water standard, but it looks like as clear as the bottles by Councilmember Bode. and you basically insert it right back into the ground into the headwaters of Goldsboro and Johns Creek. So another side is that the council was really blessed with the ARPA funding allocated to the reclaim tank. And we're basically we'll be coming back to you to show the commerce grant that gives the city $2 million to provide a storage tank there. So that allows us to add more capacity to existing customers, like the correction center, and also put more water back into that aquifer to offset any losses that we would have if we started drawing more water out of the aquifer. So when the plan is just a plan, the plan doesn't have Director Harris out there drilling a well the day that you adopt it, but it basically what the plan would say is that the city would mitigate any withdrawals or summertime flows before we did install any well and started drawing any water out. There's several steps we'd have to take. We'd do a test well, see what the yield was, and quantify what we'd be expected to get out of that well, and then in turn put that back into the aquifer so that we had net zero effect on fish. So kind of the steps to final approval. There's a couple other steps that staff are working on. We have a wellhead protection area. If you laid an egg and outlined it with your pencil on Shelton Springs, it kind of looks like this. The different colored lines are how long it takes water to get there and travel there. But in that zone, one of the things that we're required to do is send it out to business owners, property owners, to remind them to not, put pesticides in your septic tank. Things like that could eventually drain down and get into our aquifer and harm our water supply. Well, there's really no regulatory, it's more of an educational piece. So I've got 3 letters, one I'm sending out to fuel stations, one I'm sending out to residences, and one sending out to commercial businesses. But there's about 76 sites that our hydrologic consultant identified as potential contaminants that have been identified by ecology or the state or other agencies other than Shelton. So looking ahead, Gorilla promised that we'd have a draft to look at on November 8th. And we'll be getting it into your packet and presenting it to you in person on December 6th. That's all I had to present tonight. The one thing that I wanted to mention is backing up to the Angleside pressure rezone is Director Harris has been working on some funding for that, and I wanted to have him speak a little bit on that because he led the charge on those funding applications.
Good evening. So up in the Angleside Zone, we're working on removing dead storage from the existing tank. We have a project up there. So what that means is about more than half of the tank, you can't draw the water down below that because the houses are built up too high. To get the 30 PSI that Ken had mentioned at the house, you only can draw the tank down, 40% of the way. The rest of that water is not usable, or else that person will be out of pressure. So way back when they built the reservoir, they sited the houses. There should have been a big park around the reservoir and put the houses out the bottom of the hill, but it didn't happen that way. So we have a legislative request in for 1.8 million to do a bunch of repiping to bring the Angleside pressure station online to boost the pressure in the houses or up on the hill, and should eliminate the majority of that dead storage from the tank, which brings obviously a bunch of reservoir capacity back online for us. We're also in next year's budget, which is proceeding through council. We have $200,000 to design those improvements because we might not get the legislative request, but I wanted to move the project forward, at least in the design phase. So you'll see that as a CIP. And if the legislative request doesn't go through, we'll have the design done. We'll have some really good numbers, and we could look at a loan application this time next year to the state water revolving loan fund, and for the construction of that project. And potentially there's a second reservoir that needs to be added up there. We'll be looking at that also. So that's sort of the Angleside Zone in a nutshell. We'll see how the legislative request goes. typically we find out in what, about February, somewhere around that time frame.
Won't have a decision by then, but yeah, we'll see when it's moving forward or if it's moving forward.
Yep.
We're open for any questions and are excited to answer them. So I've been working on this since I started and I'm excited to put it to bed.
Be done.
No, Joe has questions.
Oh, yeah, sorry, thank you. Other than fire flow, projected growth, I think you kind of answered it too with the discussion around drilling another source well. But what was were there any other driving reasons why the Department of Health wants us to increase our storage outside of just normal typical growth and what we can serve today?
Big reason is that our 2010 plan had projects that were shrinked our, or what our storage deficit was. And they didn't get done. And so Department of Health looked back and said, hey, Sean, you need to back up a few steps, look at your old plan, make sure you're taking care of what you told us you're going to take care of back in 2010.
Gotcha.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
So the tank, like the tank on Harvard, that's being pumped from Mountain View area. The water's going all the way across town, back up that hill,
So
because there's no wells over there, right?
right. So imagine you were dropping water that came out of the well at well one. I'm talking about the well one that's up by YMCA.
Yeah.
Over there and by North 13th. So that basically flows in a pipe. And but to get up to Angleside, it's got to go through pumps right next to Director Harris' office at Public Works. It goes underneath the creek and up the hill. And you never notice because the pipes are put in the ground so long ago, it just looks like a beautiful forest. But that's how Shelton serves that area over there because we have no source there.
And that's kind of the area we'd probably put a new well in,
Correct.
out there by Harvard area.
Correct.
Well, question on the Angleside booster station, is there any chance of the designer that originally designed it maybe coming forward and doing some pro bono work on that since it doesn't work?
I would like our current engineering staff to design and review all of that. Just to make sure that this time when we spend money on it, it works the way it's supposed to work.
Well, I mean, my question was the previous designer that designed it was, you know, if they were paid to do a job and it didn't work, if there was any chance that they could come back and help with the work.
Well, the good news on that is the station appears to be very large pumps in it and it's designed adequately, building, generator source, all that. We'll be able to use those improvements. That's the piping side of it that needs to happen. That's what we have the legislative request and that we need to run parallel pipes down the streets and give these people high pressure water and take them off the low pressure water. So the devil's in those details, but the assets there, it appears is very usable.
There's been several attempts over the years to try to get that to work, correct?
I'm only aware of the original attempt and without high pressure piping coming out there and reconnecting the people that need higher pressure, that's the part of the project that need to be completed.
Right. Any other questions? No? Nope. All right. Thank you, gentlemen.
You're welcome.
All right. Does the council have any other new item of discussion?
Yep.
I forgot about you guys online. Did you have any questions?
No, sir.
No. All right, then this study session is adjourned at 6:19 p.m.